will say, from the raft of undecided voters and just people out in the world that I talked to in battleground states over the course of the last few weeks, everyone's focused on women. Everyone's focused on the gender divide. Everyone, you know, Michael Steele mentioned the quiet vote, the notion that women are going into the booth and pulling a lever that's different from the lever their husbands are pulling. That was a direct appeal from the Harris campaign. But also this phenomenon, and there's a great piece in The Atlantic today by Elizabeth Broning about what wives want and what married women are going to do. Because traditionally married white women have given their votes to Trump in the last 2 election cycles. Does abortion change that calculation? Are women who are married seeing their fates tied more to women elsewhere? Is this a moment for, I guess, not to be heavy-handed about it, but sisterhood? Can abortion unite women in states where abortion access isn't threatened to the fates and risks faced by women in states where abortion access is threatened? And I think that's a huge question. It's going to, in many ways, maybe even determine the outcome of the election, how women see each other in each other's shoes. To practice those undecided voters who are making game time calls want to vote for a winner. And it's, I mean, I really think this is unscientific, but the last week has been a very good close for Kamala Harris, not a good close for Donald Trump. He hasn't been able to fill the rallies. He's addled. He has racist comedians opening it, whatever. It's been a trashy week for Donald Trump. It's been a very strong week for Kamala Harris. And if you're sitting there in the line thinking, I want to vote for the person who has a W at
total, absolute bullshit, punditry, absolute gaslighting. The last week, Donald Trump isn't able to fill stadiums or places, venues, put 25,000 people into Madison Square Garden. That's not enough, and about 100,000 people lining the streets. But Kamala Harris is the one that was closing fast and furious. Boy, were these pundits absolutely wrong.
the end of their name after this is all over, that's a good thing for
Can I just add
people, but I feel very good about where we are, that's for sure.
As we in Wisconsin, 8 college campuses in Wisconsin have 1 to 2 hour lines as of midday. And the campaign is tracking what this means. They're saying that in some of these places, the turnout is already at 100%, what the 2020 numbers are. So that
for Donald Trump.
They're cautiously optimistic. Cautiously.
Change in the characterization of the race in Georgia. It had previously been characterized, the presidential race in Georgia had previously been characterized as too early to call. We're now changing characterization to too close to call. So again, it doesn't mean that we're anywhere closer to a result, but I wanted to get that in while you continue your exposition of why we feel that way.
I'm going to give a couple of everybody take a breath warnings here. Okay. One is DeKalb County is not in Georgia because of the poll extension of the poll hours. That is such a big county for the Democrats. We don't know what's going to happen in Georgia. I would also just reiterate, I mean, maybe you've also said this, it's like a baby blue state, I'm going to say, and that it has not been blue for a long time. It is a hard state for the Harris team.
Georgia. Just joining us right this second at 8:52:06, and I had to summarize what's going on. No surprises. Pretty much that's what's happened thus far. There's been no surprising result anywhere, I don't think. Now, that doesn't mean that said the no surprise result for the presidential race will be, it's really tight, we don't know. And that could be true for a very long time.
The turnout thing, to your point.
Friends are saying it's very tight, and they don't want to make predictions, but people are hesitant to say, but they are encouraged. They're encouraged by what they're seeing in Detroit specifically, like in all of the other battleground states, by what they're seeing on the college campuses. Those cities with large college campuses, the college students, they are in formation.
Broad national polling about, exit polling about Harris's strength among Latino men, and they seem to be breaking for Donald Trump, which is a very big difference from 2020 when they broke for Joe Biden by, I believe, 23 points. They may be breaking for Trump by as many as 10 points. Again, this is early.
Aspects of what we're talking about, that people need to just calm down. When you're running against history, guess what? That's a hard hill to climb. And I think there's a lot more game out there. So just relax, y'all.
Everybody simmer down. That's a message from the inside.
Relax, everybody, relax.
In the main studio, Rachel.
Thank you, Alex. Coming up on 9:41 on the East Coast right now, heading towards 10 p.m. poll closings. At this point, we've got no swing states called. We've got Trump doing well in terms of his margins in the 2 southern swing states that we've got the most vote in, North Carolina and Georgia, as Steve Kornacki has been portraying it. We've got no surprises really anywhere unless you want to count the Florida abortion measure falling short of here with a call. NBC News has projected a winner in the presidential race in the great state of Ohio, home state of vice presidential running mate to Donald Trump. Donald Trump is
They could have called this a whole lot earlier.
Ohio.
They really
no
could have, but they waited.
Used to be like the prototypical swing state, just like Florida. Neither of them considered to be a swing state anymore.
The one place that at least the folks I'm talking to in the campaign are looking outside of the blue wall and paying really close attention to it, and they'll be watching whatever Steve Kornacki does, is the Georgia suburbs, because that is where they're seeing overperformance for Vice President Harris, is in the suburbs of Georgia. And if she overperforms Biden in
This wasn't even true. She was just making this stuff up. Confidence in the Georgia suburbs? Even in the early vote, Georgia was showing a very, very substantial drop in black voters. especially in the suburbs. The souls to the polls, that just was down in the doles. It just didn't work at all. Percentage points down. So again, just hopium, trying to copium and bring this out to our audience. Once again, lying has absolutely no basis to do this, but it's just, as usual, MSDNC, MSLSD, the delusional network, lying to their audience.
2020 in the Georgia suburbs, that is where they see the one place to do sort of a reach state. Because again, Georgia's a reach state. I know it's now got 2 Democratic senators, but it's still a reach state for
Let
president.
me check. I don't have a call to make here, but we have a change in characterization in a couple of very important states. In the Pennsylvania presidential race, the previous characterization of this race had been too early to call. It is now too close to call in Pennsylvania. Similarly, in the Wisconsin presidential race, this had previously been too early to call. In Wisconsin, it is now too close to call.
Margin will be. I know we've called it for Trump, Ohio, but the rest of them, everybody's feeling really good about. And I'll tell you one other thing that people are feeling really good about, Rachel, and that is what they're seeing on college campuses. This is going to be big in Pennsylvania. It's going to be big in Michigan. It's going to be big in Wisconsin. And everybody needs to take a deep breath. Those are the 3.
Boy, was Claire McCaskill wrong. Remember when she also said back in 2016 that Michigan was, don't worry about it. Clinton's got it. Everything is fine. These pundits, these people that served in government that now get jobs or come on to the, legacy media networks, they're so unbelievably wrong. Like she's saying, oh, the colleges are just bursting with people, not realizing that younger generation, Gen Zs, millennials, they were breaking for Trump. Yet they're thinking, oh, Harris has got them in the bag just because Joe Biden did.
States we need. Don't have to have Georgia, don't have to have North Carolina. We have to have those 3. And they have been surprised. The campaign has been surprised.
We don't have very many more poll closings, right? We'll have poll closings at 11 and 12 and 1 at midnight, 1 at 1 a.m. But we're not watching poll closings essentially for all the news right now. We're watching for any one of these swing states to close in on something called.
Let's be blunt. I think when you watched what Donald Trump did in 2020, what Democrats were fantasizing about was a landslide victory, where he wouldn't be able to peer at a red mirage and falsely claim victory. And so some of what was wanted and desired was a sweep that in a 50-50 country where the final best poll had her +4 nationally really didn't, the data suggested that something that would disallow Donald Trump to claim victory before the results were known, that really wasn't on the table. We live in an evenly divided country and it creates anxiety, but it also requires patience.
It's also, I think the reason there's so much anxiety is that I think, and I've gotten a fair number of these texts, and I'm sure you all are as well, it is fairly shocking. And I don't think it's something that should make us super proud that despite all of the things that just we've seen in the last 2 weeks, even if you could
Here it
somehow
comes,
forget January
folks.
6th
Here
and an
comes the
attempted
bullshit.
coup to overthrow the country, even if you could forget taking classified documents and hiding them in your bathroom, even if you could set aside, which is very hard to set aside, an adjudication of sexual abuse against a woman and then 24 other allegations, and Jeffrey Epstein saying was his best friend, and you name it. You just think about just the last 2 weeks and the things that Donald Trump has said into the TV, that people could hear him say and do, the vulgarity in front of families with young children, and the threats to do mass deportation and a violent start to his dictatorship on day 1, and you name it. If all of that gets you half of the votes,
48, 49%.
what does it tell you? I mean, we need to really take a step back and think.
Look at all the white people. Look at all the white people listening to Joy, right? All the white people are saying, what, I ain't ignorant. But you know who is ignorant? Joy Reid is ignorant because she's a race hater, a race traitor, and a race baiter. And if you were measuring her IQ, you couldn't measure it because negative doesn't go that low.
About what does that say about us?
And things are starting, I would say, to come into focus because it's later, but we still have not a single swing state called.
Yeah, one thing I will just say, I'm not trying to be rosy all the time at all, but this always happens on election nights where the bigger cities, where Democrats have the bigger share of the vote coming later. And there are a lot of places, Grand Rapids, Michigan, a bigger chunk of Philly, Dane County in Wisconsin. We don't know what they'll be, but we got to wait and see what they are before anybody starts drinking on their couch or whatever they need to do.
They're already doing that.
They already do.
We've got too early to call in North Carolina, Arizona, Nevada, and it's too close to call in Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan.
I mean, blue wall, baby, that was always going to be a blue wall night. And I think that, I tried to speak a little bit to some of the
Let's go,
fantasies,
Nicole.
right, of a
What's your
landslide victory
bullshit?
that would erase any doubt, that would eradicate, the threat of something drawn out. And that is, I'm so loath to quote Don Rumsfeld with all of you, but I will anyway. I feel like Liz Cheney has made that somewhat acceptable again.
Still not acceptable.
You go to the polls with the country that you have, and the country we have lives in two totally separated information ecosystems. Whatever happens, we'll have to really understand the information consumption that young men have and why they think that the economy will be better under Donald Trump when it never was. I think that...
Again, total lies from Nicole Willis. And you should know, good old Nicole. Absolute lies, folks. The lies that come out of these people's mouths is uneffing believable. They would lie to their own mothers, their own grandmothers, if it meant that they could get a win. I mean, the gaslighting that these people do. She's asking us, how come young male voters are voting for Donald Trump with the economy when the economy wasn't that good under Donald Trump? But when you poll and you do these man in the street interviews, what's the first thing everybody says? I had more money in my wallet. I was able to afford more things. I was able to afford groceries and gas and the rent and the mortgage and all the other stuff. I was able to afford a house. I was able to afford a lot of things. But then what does Nicole and all of her acolytes there say? Good old Nicole? She says, it's all in your head. You really weren't that well off back then. And besides, that wasn't Trump's economy at that time. That was Obama's. Barack Obama. It was his. Don't give any credit to the Trumpster.
Waiting for these blue wall states to come in because they're so close, because households are divided, right? There could be a yard sign in a house that doesn't represent how everyone in the house will vote in either direction. And so I think it's going to be a late night. And I think it's the polls. I mean, I guess a slice of good news.
It was household signage that's going to decide this election. This is the punditry that we're getting. This is really, okay, the expertise. Signage outside in a person's yard. Oh, well, wait a minute now. Kamala Harris did talk about that, in her community, there was such a thing as people had lawns. So maybe signage on a lawn is sort of what the old Nicole was trying to go for.
News that the polls have accurately captured this dead heat.
We all know that one. We don't know who's going to win Michigan, Wisconsin, and
yes, we do.
Which means that when you actually put aside a lot of the energy and the understandable emotion and commitment, we are in a similar place than we were a few hours ago. I have seen people start to jump on trends, but we don't know who's going to win those states. If Kamala Harris wins those states, then she would be in a path to win the presidency.
Room here just for a moment that I just lost my IFB. And so I am now one of these people who's speaking but can't hear anything.
You can tell me and I'll tell you.
So go ahead. So if control room is saying anything to me for right now, I think my battery's died, so take it away.
Go to Steve.
Rachel, you seem so energized.
But I do know, actually, with nobody talking to me, that we do need to.
Well, go get your batteries there, Rachel Maddow, into your vibrator. You probably need it, okay? They do something to get excited today.
Go to Steve.
But
yes.
Steve.
Yeah. I understand. Did you just throw to me?
Yeah, it was me.
Somebody was telling me IFP. I apologize. Here we go. Some more returns in Pennsylvania. As I gather my train of thought here, I wanted to update you on.
MSNBC senior contributing editor Michelle Norris. She's at Harris Election Night headquarters at Howard University. Michelle, what do you say?
Hey, Rachel. Well, the crowd here is still large, is still loud, but a little bit more subdued. And the word that I keep hearing, it must be some new phrase that's entered the lexicon, is the idea that people here are nauseously optimistic. Not just cautiously optimistic, but nauseously optimistic. And so, people here are watching and they're wondering what's going to happen.
I'm getting nauseous just watching the coverage here, try to stay, without throwing up.
But in Pennsylvania, they're ready for a long, long night. And one of the reasons I've heard also is that they wanted to inject so much joy into the beginning of this is because they knew the DJ and the dancing and the line dancing, because they knew that this was going to be a long night and that it was going to be a real nail biter. And it appears that is exactly what we're looking at right now.
Michelle Norris, they are enthusiastic about what those votes are going to say. And they are, as Michelle Norris noted, nauseously optimistic. People are nauseously optimistic. They're clear-eyed. And people within the campaign and then strategists surrounding the campaign.
Good old Simone. She's starting to crack. Maybe it's because Kamala Harris didn't get the vote from the black. Jack, that's a matter of fact.
Campaign have all said to me within the last hour, we have been clear that it was going to be close. Now, folks may not have believed that given the energy and the momentum, but the campaign itself and the folks specifically very close to the campaign have always been clear that this was going to be a close race. They believe Pennsylvania is still in play. And I do also think that there's it's my understanding of they have a sense of that the reality is that Georgia is not an option for a win this go round. And North Carolina is not looking like it as well, but folks need to wait and see. Wake County, rest of Mecklenburg County in North Carolina will make a difference. Wisconsin, I will note, folks in Wisconsin say they think it'll be a classic Wisconsin photo finish, but they feel good about where they are.
Sources about the.
So again, folks, you see more lies as you see the headline there, basically, that we put up. Michael Steele says Republicans are skeptical of winning Michigan. Now, we all know what happened. But if you take a look at the trend lines, if you take a look at what was going on and how many votes were in at that time and how many outstanding votes were there, what Michael was portraying to the audience was absolutely untrue. But they had to have some type of hopium so they could inject their copium. And again, this is what these political news stations that basically are saying, instead of just trying to stay neutral, could you tell in which direction these guys, I mean, you have a news organization that not a single person on that panel was a Trump supporter. Every single freaking one of them were Kamala Harris sycophants, lapdogs. Every single freaking one of them. And yet this is supposed to be, I mean, they tell us they're unbiased. They're playing it straight down the middle. They really think that the American voter, especially conservatives and Republicans, they really do think that we're deplorable, that we're stupid, that we're idiotic, that we can't differentiate between two candidates, that we're uneducated. That's what these people think, folks. These are elitist snobs living in their multi-million-dollar mansions. These are multi-millionaires, and they look down upon us as if we shouldn't matter. And when we give votes and we give our support to people like Donald Trump or America First candidates, conservatives, big R Republicans that are conservatives, true conservatives, they sit there and they pontificate and look down upon us and basically say, they're uneducated. That's why they vote that way. Anyways, we appreciate you taking time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasser Sheikh Show. I'm your host, Dr. Nasser. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel, like, share, and follow us. You all know what to do. Hit that notification bell. Tell us below what you think. Folks, this was a pretty long clip. We divided it into smaller vignettes, so this is just the part one of it. Take a look at our lists. You'll see 4 of them up here. I want you to check them all out. And I'll tell you what I've always said, which is my final thought. When you're right, you're right. And when you're left, you're wrong. Until next time, folks, take care and stay safe.